Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees lose 2 of 3 at the Toronto Blue Jays, and the defense yet again was a disaster. Completely sloppy and made mistake after mistake after mistake. Uh, you know, Aaron Boone is saying that this is specific to games at Rogers Center, and yes, I mean both series were horrific in the field, but just in general, this team has been really bad defensively. It's been a problem on and off for several years, and I don't think one trade deadline is going to fix that. Right? Like I'm sure they're going to try to make some moves and to shore some things up, but to me, it's just more ingrained in this organization, right? Because they did make certain improvements from last season individually, but yet there's still many problems. And, Toronto made less mistakes when it comes down to the end of the day. And I was really hoping the Yankees would take 2 of 3 in the series to cut it to a 2-game deficit against the Blue Jays, but instead they're down 4 games. So Yankees record 56-46 on the year. And so that puts you with 60 games left. So still a good chunk of season remaining, but you've already played now 102 games. And there is one more series against Toronto at Yankee Stadium in September. So as far as the head-to-head matchup goes, the Blue Jays have already won the season series. They're already up 7-3. So even if the Yankees sweep that series, if there were to be a tie at the end of the season, Toronto would be the one that would have the advantage in that situation. And it's just really unfortunate. Not that run differential tells the whole story, but the Yankees have a plus 106 run differential compared to the Blue Jays plus 32. Blue Jays deserve credit. Like, they are finding ways to win. And not only that, the Blue Jays are beating good teams too. Like, they have a very good record against teams above 500. Blue Jays are fantastic at home, 37-17. So that's another thing. Let's say the Yankees matched up with the Blue Jays in the playoffs. You want to have home field advantage. You want that final game to be at Yankee Stadium. The Yankees, it's been a house of horrors for them in Toronto. And yet again, it's just that bad defense. And that showed itself in each game, but specifically in the losses in games 1 and 3. Truly unacceptable any way you look at it. And again, like, I just don't know that this is necessarily going to get a whole lot better. And, the Yankees, they could tell you whatever they want, that this is actually a good defensive team and whatever. A lot of it's just lip service, but I really am concerned, but it's even beyond concern. It's just you're used to it at this point. You prepare yourself for it. And the Yankees ended up with 4 errors in the final game here. It could have been 5 or 6 very easily. In fact, it kind of should have been in a way. That's how bad we're talking about. And what was at the time the biggest game of the season. You had Max Fried on the mound and Fried in his first start back. Not so good. He got off to a good start and kind of ran out of gas towards the end. But it's just really bad. So to take it back to the beginning, Yankees coming off of winning 2 of 3 in Atlanta. So vibes were relatively high. Nothing over the top, but for game 1, it was Carlos Rodon against Kevin Gausman. And Kevin Gausman pitched a really good game for Toronto. The win for him gets him to 7-7, 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. And what sucks is that the Yankees have been getting to Gausman lately in the last couple of seasons, where he used to have their number, but as his skills have diminished just a bit, and the Yankees have taken advantage of that. Not in this one. He really silenced them. It was one mistake to Giancarlo Stanton that was the only blemish on Gausman's stat line. For Rodon, he loses to go to 10-7, 5 innings, 6 hits, 4 runs, 2 of those earned, 5 walks, and 4 strikeouts. Now, Rodon wasn't bad. The walks jump out at you. 5 walks in 5 innings. That can't happen. The Blue Jays have just been grinding out at bats against the Yankees. They cannot put these Blue Jays hitters away. 5 walks, but again, 4 runs, 2 earned. So it ends up being 107 pitches. So Rodon wasn't the most efficient. I'm not going to kill Rodon. Was it a good outing? No, but it certainly wasn't a bad one. He kept them in it, and we'll talk about what happened in a very bad and sloppy 5th inning. Why is it the 5th inning that tends to be the Yankees' bad innings, right? And I kind of say that in jest, but like, obviously last year, the World Series, the infamous fifth inning happened in game one here. Um, in game three, it was either the fifth or I think it might have been partially the fifth. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was. So I don't know what it is about the fifth inning, but um, for the Yankees lineup, the odd men out of this first lineup here were Ben Rice as well as Cody Bellinger, which is somewhat controversial. Like Cody Bellinger has sat in pretty big games, and that's really unideal. And I know that they want to balance things around. I know that Bellinger's numbers in his career were not good against Gosman, but Cody Bellinger in a series like this needs to be playing every game. Like that's just what it comes down to. I know the line of thinking, but we got to, that's kind of not what you're going for. It's like, sorry, Dominguez, or sorry, Grisham, whatever it might be, Bellinger needs to be in the lineup, plain and simple. So the only thing that kind of looked different lineup wise in terms of the structure was, Chisholm batting third, which you don't normally see. Dominguez in the 5 spot, which he probably hasn't been in too much this year. So the Yankees would get on the board first. And, games 1 and 3, honestly, were pretty similar, really. I mean, game 1 had a little bit more pitching, I guess. And game 3, the final score ends up being a little bit, um, more, not necessarily that much more lopsided, but they were similar, like I said. And the top of the 4th, Giancarlo Stanton homers. And to that point, he had been scorching hot coming out of that Atlanta series. Stanton has been very good. Wasn't so good in game 2, and then he sat in game 3. And that sit in game 3, I'm more like all right with it. I don't love it, but Stan's a little bit of a different breed as far as needing to get him days off and his health and whatever, as opposed to Bellinger. So 5th home run for Stanton makes it 1-0 Yankees. Rodon gets into some trouble in the bottom of the 4th, but is able to escape out. Whereas he had a more, he got into trouble. I mean, he did kind of get out of jams a lot of the way, I guess is what I'd say. Like the 2nd inning and the 4th inning weren't easy, but now we go to, top of the 5th, there was a spot for Judge to do something, and he pops out with a run on third, 2 out. What I'll say about Judge is, not a great series for him. He did have a big homer in game 3. And like I always say, he always like finds a way to do something of significance each series. However, that was the only hit he had. So John Schneider did intentionally walk him at times, chose not to at other times, but the score remains 1-0. We go to the 5th. And of course, it's George Springer that gets it going with a leadoff walk. It's never a good recipe for success. Leadoff walks tend to hurt. And then Vlad Guerrero Jr. with the single makes it 1-0. First and second, no out. And then a Bo Bichette RBI, a 2-run double makes it 2-1 Blue Jays. Was Dominguez maybe a little bit slow getting in the corner? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not going to make a big deal about that. Makes it 2-1 Blue Jays. Here's where things get fucked up. Rodon gets a couple of outs, and mind you, Davis Schneider had a long at-bat. To be specific, a 14-pitch at-bat, which Rodon wins the battle. Took a lot out of Rodon. At that point, you're kind of realizing he may not pitch, more than 5 innings, but it's still 2-1. But then a couple of really, really bad mistakes by Oswald Peraza and Anthony Volpe, and to a lesser extent, Paul Goldschmidt. Miles Straw, they call it a single, which I don't agree with at all. It's called a single for Straw. Peraza makes a bad throw, and what it does is it allows Bichette to score. That's a play Peraza needs to make. Peraza can't hit. So you need him to be super, super sound defensively, and he was not that. Like, that cannot happen. The thing with the third base position is somehow, some way, there will be a new third baseman at the trade deadline. I don't know who it will be, but that would be malpractice if there isn't. But it's still bad. Then the next batter, and with the runner on second, because again, like the throw was that bad. Leo Jimenez reaches on a throwing error by Anthony Volpe. Now, could Goldschmidt have scooped this? Yes, he could have. And has Goldschmidt saved Volpe a million times this year? Yes, he also has. But this makes it 4-1, and the Volpe talks and heat continue. Now, I will say that Volpe, he hits a home run in game 3. Like, Volpe kind of Oh, no, sorry. Volpe made another error in game two. So, like, more struggles for Anthony Volpe, but now, like, it's more like the way the series ends. Volpe surprisingly was not part of the problem in game three, which is surprising. But he really was a major topic of conversation coming out of game one. Anthony Volpe is a problem for this New York Yankee team as their starting shortstop. So that makes it 4-1. And that was all she wrote. That 4-run fifth for the Blue Jays. Gosman held it down. For the Yankees, Scott Effross comes in to replace Carlos Rodon, pitches a scoreless sixth. In the seventh, JT Brubaker would pitch the seventh and eighth. Brubaker's actually been pretty decent lately in mop-up situations. I mean, he's not a guy you're going to bring in there in big spots, but Brubaker, as sort of a guy that can give you multiple innings, has been decent lately for what it's worth. The best chance the Yankees have was the eighth. The Blue Jays bring on lefty Brendan Little. Grisham walks, then a not good strikeout by Judge. Chisholm Jr. singles, and then they bring on the righty Royel Rodriguez, and Stanton lines out. Stanton at that point, who had hit a home earlier, was the tying run up and lined out to center, and then Dominguez grounds out to second. Dominguez has not been particularly good in runners in scoring position situations. The ninth inning is Jeff Hoffman. Goldschmidt strikes out. Again, I know it wouldn't happen, but I would certainly think long and hard about pinch hitting for Goldschmidt in certain situations when it's a right-on-right spot late and you have lefty options off the bench. Then Wells strikes out. Austin Wells is back to struggling. He's been very, very streaky, more cold than hot. And then they do pinch hit Rice for Volpe, and Rice strikes out to end game one. So Yankees lose game one. Again, defense being a major topic of conversation, even though the offense didn't do well either, to be very fair there. Game two, Cam Schlittler on the mound for the Yankees, making his first road start of his career. And he didn't really have great stuff, but yet, hey, 5 innings, 2 runs, which is kind of what Rodon would have done without the bad defense. But Schlittler, 5 innings, 7 hits, 2 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. Not a very pretty line, but was able to, again, make the big outs when he had to. So encouraging from Schlittler that even when he's not on his A game, he can still, do the job. For the Blue Jays, and Schlittler actually was in line for the win, but due to, again, more poor defense, he would not get the win, the no decision he would get. Max Scherzer for the Blue Jays, 5 innings, 5 hits, 4 runs, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts for Scherzer. Makes a couple of mistakes, which leads to giving up those 4 runs. For the Yankees, lineup-wise, Paul Goldschmidt would be starting on the bench. So Goldschmidt actually did not start games 2 or 3, which is interesting. Again, I don't mind it, but I do think against righties that Goldschmidt, isn't someone that should be in there all the time. And he actually sits games 2 and 3. I didn't really think that they would do that, but they did. And then the other player that sat would be Jason Dominguez, who at that point was 0 for like his last 18 or so. So, he cooled off as well. So, and Bibas would be the third baseman as opposed to Peraza. And Anthony Volpe bats 9th in this game. So the first game that Anthony Volpe would be in the 9-hole all season. Yankees, again, take the lead. And that was the case in all 3 games. The Yankees scored first. Single Grisham, double Bellinger, strikeout Judge. So, again, not great, but Jazz Chisholm Jr. gets it done. A bad pitch by Scherzer, full count right down the middle, and Jazz hits a 3-run shot. His 18th homer of the year makes it 3-0 Yankees. Then in the bottom of the first, the Blue Jays would get 1 run back against Schlittler. A 2-out RBI single for Addison Barger makes it 3-1, but that was all the damage that Toronto would have that inning. There's a really nice catch by Cody Bellinger in the second that prevented what could have been a really ugly inning. And, Schlittler gets Vlad Guerrero Jr. to pop out to end that second, which was big. Then let's go to the 5th. Cody Bellinger, who had a great game, great game, too, hits his 18th homer of the year. He had 3 hits, 2 doubles and a homer for Bellinger. Makes it 4-1 Yanks, but Blue Jays do get 1 run back. And yet again, it was an Addison Barger 2-out RBI single to make it 4-2. This was after a very nice double play by Volpe and Chisholm on Bo Bichette. That was huge. Otherwise, again, this could have been a pretty big inning for the Blue Jays. Makes it 4-2, and Schlittler finishes 5 innings. Let's go to the bottom of the 6th. Tim Hill comes on, the lefty, and Miles Straw then pinch hits for the lefty, Joey Loperfido. And this is where Anthony Volpe is charged with the throwing error. it wasn't an egregious throw, but it's a throw that needs to be made. Ben Rice could have maybe made the play. Yes, he could have. Would Goldschmidt made the play? Probably. But Anthony Volpe, with his 13th error of the season, that is completely unacceptable. And ultimately, it leads to 2 runs being scored by Toronto that wouldn't have otherwise happened. So it's essentially, yeah, I mean, basically on Hill's ledger as well. Yeah, both runs would have went to Hill. With 1 out and a runner on first, Davis Schneider gets an RBI double to make it 4-3. Then Nathan Lucas lines out. So then which Jonathan Loaisiga comes in. Now, this is frustrating. Loaisiga has been really, really bad this season. And George Springer with a RBI single to tie the game up. And I understand the options are limited. Like the Yankees need bullpen help badly. Now they have players injured that will come back. That will help. But either way, whether it's by players coming back or bringing new guys in, like the fact that Jonathan Loaisiga is still kind of one of your like top 3 or 4 or 5 options is a problem. And that ties up before he would get Vlad Guerrero to strike out, however, to end the inning. And then Loaisiga starts the 7th. I just, for the life of me, I just don't quite understand why that was the case. Luke Weaver was warming up, and Bo Bichette with a leadoff double. Boone has done that now on a few occasions, but luckily Luke Weaver, as he did in Atlanta, Luke Weaver is able to get out of it with 3 straight outs. So the good news there is Weaver has really turned his season back around to what we saw earlier on. That's really good news. Bottom of the 8th, he would let up a 1-out walk to Davis Schneider. But then Ian Hamilton comes in, and that's scary as well, right? Hamilton kind of in a similar role with Loaisiga. Although, to be honest, give me Hamilton over Loaisiga. Not that I feel good about it, but like everything being equal, I'd probably prefer Hamilton at this point. He gets Springer to line out. Hit pretty well, but they get out of it. Then we go to the top of the 9th with Blue Jays closer Jeff Hoffman out there, and with 1 out, Ben Rice with a big solo homer, his 15th homer of the year, to give the Yankees a 5-4 lead. They needed that badly in a big, big way, and Rice delivers to give the Yankees the lead again. Then Devin Williams comes out in the bottom of the 9th, gives a leadoff single to Vlad Guerrero Jr., but gets Bo Bichette to strike out and looking silly. Then Addison Barger hit one well to left center field, but Bellinger tracks it down, and then Alejandro Kirk strikes out, also looking silly. So Devin Williams picks up his 15th save of the season, and the Yankees win 5-4. So again, mistakes in this game. You think about specifically Volpe, Loaisiga's ineffectiveness, but like they get it done. And that's all that matters. So the Yankees finally get off the schneid against the Blue Jays in Toronto. And they tie the series at 1. And now you're feeling okay. 1-1. You got Max Fried in the mound in game 3. Like there's a good chance to maybe win the series, but that is not what happens. Fried loses to drop to 11-4, 5 1/3 innings, 6 hits, 6 runs, 4 of those earned, 3 walks and 3 strikeouts for Fried. So not a good line there for him. And even before the blister issue, I felt as if Fried has not been quite as effective as he had been. Chris Bassett, on the other hand, he gets the win, moves to 11-4. So now they both have the same record, actually. 7 1/3 innings, 3 hits, 4 runs, 3 of those earned, no walks and 8 strikeouts for Bassett. And if nothing else, Bassett has pitched deep into these games against the Yankees, and that is the case. I mean, he pitches into the 8th inning, and there's efficiency with that. I mean, Bassett threw 94 pitches, 1 out into the 8th. I mean, that's just not great for the Yankees. The Yankees were very home. When you think about the series, the Yankees got all of their runs via the home run. I had just, right? Yeah. Stanton in game 1. That was the 1 run. Then in game 2, Chisholm 3-run homer, Bellinger homer, and Rice homer. And then in this game, Dominguez homer, Volpe homer, 2-run homer by Judge. All of their runs by the home run. And that speaks a lot. That speaks a lot to, not getting the big hit when it was there. Although the Yankees, to be honest, really didn't have that many runners in scoring opportunities. But it also speaks to is the Blue Jays not with making as many self-inflicted wounds. And the one time they did, the Yankees did take advantage of it. We'll get there, though, in this game. So game 3, Goldschmidt out again, as he was in game 2. And then as well, it would be on the bench, Giancarlo Stanton. So that led to Aaron Judge being the DH and Bellinger moving to right, which ends up actually not being good. It's a rare, rare fuck up by Cody Bellinger and also JC Escara catching. And Escara, who I've spoken fairly highly of for someone that doesn't have great stats, now it's to the point where he's not really doing much of anything offensively, and the defense seems to not be, he seems to make pretty critical defensive mistakes. Um, Even though I still wish that he got more of an opportunity, like he's not really taking advantage of those chances when he gets them. Um, so second inning, Jason Dominguez, he breaks the cold spell that he had. Home run, ninth homer of the year, makes it 1-0 Yankees. So at this point, feeling good. And Fried was perfect through his first 10 batters. Really, really good for Fried. But then in the fourth, he gets into trouble, and it's George Springer that gets it started again. Springer has been a Yankee killer, and he's just been good in general this season. Springer, single. Vlad Guerrero Jr., RBI double, ties it up at 1. And then it's a situation where Bichette ground out, Alejandro Kirk walk, Barger with an infield single on a really nice play by Peraza to keep it in the infield, but then he bobbles it for just a half second, which leads to Barger being safe. So not going to blame Peraza there, but if he was able to do everything right, they might get Barger. And then Ernie Clement gets an RBI single, so Fried could not stop the bleeding, makes it 2-1. And then luckily, Peraza makes a fantastic play to end the fourth. So in some ways, it actually could have been worse than 2-1. But the Yankees with a quick response. Anthony Volpe homers off of Bassett. His 13th homer of the year, ties it up at 2. And Volpe, who has struggled a lot lately, but the one thing I'll say, he has been hitting some home runs a little bit here. So that's the one good thing. Got to give the credit where it's due. And that ties it up at 2. Bottom of the fifth, bad Yankee defense is back at it. A Davis Schneider walk, and again, the walks hurt Fried, no question. Then you had a very close play at second that was originally ruled out and then called safe. I wish the Jazz had kept the tag on Schneider, because maybe if that happens, maybe he's out or the call on the field stands, but it doesn't. Schneider's in there safely. And then Springer walks to make it first and second. And then a wild pitch on a play that Escara needs to keep in front of him. He just has to. And so then I was thinking in the moment, well, you have a base open, with Guerrero up. You might want to pitch around him or pitch carefully. And then Guerrero hits a tapper towards Fried. It's a tough play for Fried. He's in no man's land. And he throws it to Escara, and it goes by him. So not only does the first run score in Schneider, but Springer comes all the way around to score as well. I'm not mad at Fried for this, but, he tried the best he could, but it ended up being a worst-case scenario as 2 runs score there. And then you even get a play after that where Bichette lines out to second, and Chisholm tries to get the runner out at first, and it ends up being a thrower on Chisholm on a play that maybe Rice could have kept in front of him, just completely ugly fifth, and it wouldn't stop there. It would not stop there. In the sixth, Grisham reaches on a Guerrero error, gets the second on the play as well. Eventually, they don't walk Judge. Runner on third, 1 out, Judge the tying run, and Judge homers. A big, big home run for Aaron Judge. His 37th homer of the year, ties the game up at 4 in the sixth. Now the bottom of 6 we go. And Fried is still in there, trying to end the game for him on the right note. However, Cody Bellinger lets him down. With 1 out, it's ruled a triple by Ernie Clement on a ball that Bellinger just simply lost in the lights. Bellinger never really makes mistakes like that, but he makes one at the worst time possible. And then Miles Stroh with an RBI double gives the Blue Jays a 5-4 lead. Loizia then comes in for Fried, and it looked as if he had actually done the job. He gets an out. It's runner on third, 2 out. Will Wagner, the pinch hitter, hits what is a routine ground ball to Ben Rice at first, and Rice boots it. So the Blue Jays now take a 6-4 lead. So it's just getting worse and worse and worse. In the seventh is where Aaron Boone gets ejected, as well as Matt Blake, the pitching coach. Earlier, there was a bad call on Oswald Peraza that was called a strike, should have been a ball, and Manny Gonzalez, the ump, admitted to Boone, I was wrong. But then here, Volpe strikes out looking on a similar bad call. Matt Blake freaks out. He gets thrown out, and then Boone speaks to Gonzalez, and then he gets kicked out as well. Bottom of the seventh, more shoddy defense. Scott Effross comes in, and Effross, does not do well. But Vlad Guerrero Jr., what looked to be a single, Jason Dominguez bobbles it, and he goes to second. And then Bo Bichette with a 2-run homer. Bichette's 13th home of the year makes it 8-4. And then there was an Alejandro Kirk double that, quite honestly, Dominguez did not do well. Jason Dominguez is not a good defensive player. It's just maybe that gets better as his career goes on, but right now it is not like good at all. Eighth inning, Justin Brewer, the lefty, comes on for Bassett. Grisham single, Bellinger single with one out, but then a Judge double play. Unfortunately, that was kind of their last real chance. It was a close play at first. They reviewed it, but ultimately they called it out on the field. They kept it that way. JT Brubaker with a scoreless eighth inning, and then it would be Yariel Rodriguez for the ninth. And the Yankees did hit the ball hard, but 1-2-3 inning, they go down, and the Blue Jays win the season series against the Yankees, and now they're up 4 games on the Yanks, with a week or so before the trade deadline. So now the Yankees will head home to take on the Phillies for 3 and then the Rays for 4. So the Rays one looming larger, but the Phillies is interesting. The Phillies are in an NL East race with the Mets. So big games for the Phillies. The Phillies are coming off of having won 2 of 3 against the Red Sox and came very close to sweeping them and probably should have swept them. They had a 5-0 lead and they blew it to Boston. So the game 1 matchup, former Met, actually, Taijuan Walker and former Blue Jay, against Will Warren. So Warren, who is better at home than he is on the road, will look to continue that trend on Friday night at Yankee Stadium. Game 2, lefty Ranger Suarez against Marcus Stroman. And Stroman's coming off of his best outing of the year, so hopefully he can, bring that into this game. But, on paper, that's a tough matchup. And then game 3, that's your best one. It's Zach Wheeler against Carlos Rodon, but that's kind of a scary one. So the way I kind of look at this just from a pitching matchup standpoint, game 1 would seem to be the one that might have the most runs in it. And I just hope that the Yankees can do something against Taijuan Walker. Because, again, Suarez and Wheeler are definitely not going to be easy. But we'll see what happens in this Phillies-Yankees series. Should be a pretty interesting one. And the Yankees are just going to hope to turn things around. But, this is very, very, very disappointing. Again, you got about a week's time until the deadline. So it'll be 3 versus the Phillies, 4 versus the Rays at Yankee Stadium after the Yankees will be coming back from Toronto, having been losers of 2 of 3 in yet another ugly, ugly defensive performance.